Hello, and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today for the launch of our Strategy and Performance Master Series. My name is Jerusalem. I'm an innovation consultant at Actio. You might be wondering, why are we hosting this and why does it matter? Well, this series is sponsored by Actio. Actio is a software company supporting hundreds of companies across industries with practical tools for strategy execution and performance management. We've seen what works and, more importantly, what doesn't when it comes to turning strategy into action. This platform is to give strategy professionals like you a space to share and grow together. We've seen the demand for this. From conversation with clients and partners, it became clear they want insights, frameworks, and community. We've created a dedicated space where you can connect with peers, access bonus content, and contribute to your experience. So here's our invitation. Please join our community. So we'll put in the chat the link to our community. You'll also have access to future events, including upcoming open mic session on June 19. There will be a live informal exchange of our biggest strategic challenge and how we're tackling them. And for those of you who complete the 8-part series, it will issue a certificate of participation. Right. It's going to be an ongoing 8-part series, and you'll be signed up for all the sessions. And the format will vary from session to session. We'll have a lecture just like this one, and also we'll have a case study of real life, and then also interview with experts and practitioners who are doing this work on the ground. Our goal is to keep it dynamic and rooted in real life practice. So over the next several weeks, we'll be exploring some of the key current topics in the world of strategy execution. We'll be exploring themes like embracing agility by implementing OKR, different management methodologies or frameworks such as balanced scorecard, OKRs, and also an AI technology. All right. So in today's session, we'll introduce the strategy management framework that connects all upcoming topics into the series. And right after that, I'll take you through a live demo of Actio's strategy execution platform, so you can see how the concept we're discussing are supported by real tools. Okay. Throughout the session, please feel free to submit your questions via the Slido link. We'll put it in the chat. And at the end, we'll reserve some time to answer these questions. All right. And after the session, please take a moment to complete the feedback form. Your input will help us improve and shape our future session. All right. Now, I'm pleased to introduce someone who has a depth of experience in this topic, Guilherme Barbassa. Guilherme is a CEO and co-founder of Actio Software. He brings over 20 years of experience at the intersection of strategy, technology, and execution, working closely with both large enterprises and fast-growing companies. He will walk us through the framework that connects these teams and set the foundation for the series. Over to you, Guilherme.
Oh, hello, everybody. We're very excited to have you here and open this program. It's been a long time demand from many of our clients and peers to have a community, right? To exchange information, experiences, and get in touch with what's new in the market. So please join the community, right? Jerusalem mentioned, but I just want to reinforce it. It's important to have you there and have some point of contact outside of the lectures here, because the lectures tend to be one way, right? Even though we do have a question and answer in the end, in the community, you can exchange experience amongst yourselves, right? So don't forget to join the community. Well, the common thread between all of the events here is strategy management, right? So this is our focus, and I imagine you are all strategy management practitioners in some level, right? So before we dive into the topics themselves that are, in the forefront of strategy management, I think it's important for us to level what is the concept of strategy management that we're going to be working on, right? So first, I'll bring here a definition. So a definition of that we're working with, and we are going to eventually come back to it many times during these 8 events, right? So strategy management is the continuous process of formulating, planning, executing, monitoring, and adjusting the organization's strategic objectives to ensure alignment with its mission, vision, and external environment. Okay, so let's break this down into parts. First, it's a process. It's not something you do and are done with, right? I've seen many companies refer to strategy as an event or a period during the year where you formulate the strategy, right? It's actually a continuous process. It doesn't stop throughout the year because the formulation of the strategy, coming up with the strategy, it's just the beginning, right? Choosing which strategy you're going to implement is what we call the formulating step. So it's the first part, but then you have to plan, right? How are you going to roll out this strategy? You're going to get the strategy that you chose and develop projects and cascade throughout the organization the objectives and KPIs so that everybody is involved and everybody knows their contribution to that strategy. So this is the planning phase, right? It comes right after the formulation. In some companies, it's a more formal process. In other companies, it's more of a, each one should guide themselves by the strategy that is defined and do their own planning. But then there's big risks in doing that. If you get segments, of functions within the company, like marketing, production, sales, with their own tactical plan, but they don't connect to the rest of the company, right? So planning is the second step of strategy management. And finally, executing. So is making sure that what was planned is actually happening, is actually being implemented, right? So this is where we see the project management, the action plans being monitored and executed. And you have to, the next step is monitor. Monitor if the strategy is actually being implemented and if the goals are being met and the strategy is generating the results that are expected, right? Because every time you select a strategy, you have a hypothesis, right? I think that if we do this, if we occupy this market, we're going to get this result. But that may not be true, right? So you have to monitor if your strategy not only is being implemented, but if it's being effective, right? And if it's not being effective, you have to adjust. And this is, as I mentioned before, a continuous process, eternally monitoring and adjusting the strategy to whatever comes new in the market, new trends, new competitors, new markets, new technologies, right? So you must be constantly reassessing the strategy itself, okay? So there's a framework I like very much that makes this concept more tangible. I think we should go through the framework itself in a way that it will get consolidated in everybody's mind. And the next step I'm going to take after going through the framework is going through each of those topics that we're going to explore in more depth in the future events and situating them in the framework to see where that topic impacts strategy management, right? So let's dive into the framework itself. The beginning of the framework is your company's identification, right? So it starts with what business the company is in, what's the mission of the company, and where it wants to go. So the vision of the company. And all of that has some boundaries and some conditions that are the company's beliefs and values. So we're not going to reach our vision in any way. We're going to go for our vision, respecting our beliefs and values, right? So this is the very beginning of strategy formulation. Then you can come into the competitive analysis. So we're going to look outwards in the company. Competitive analysis, Michael Porter has a very famous and very used model of competitive analysis where you look at, your suppliers, your clients, the market, the segmentation of the market, regulations. You look at the internal competitiveness of your company compared to your competition, right? So you analyze the whole market and understand what's your position in it and what are the moving parts of this market. And you always also trace scenarios. So you look forward, right, into the future and try to trace and understand what is the tendencies, what are the trends, right, of the market that we're in. Finally, with all of this, you're able to identify threats and opportunities, right? So you looked outwards and you're mapping out threats and opportunities that can go into your strategy formulation. With that, you already have enough to define a strategic positioning. So where do we want to be positioned within this market, right? Being generic, we fill in every need that comes in, or are we going to be niche? Or, there are so many possible strategic positionings. And here you have to start making your choices, right? And with strategic positioning, you can establish your global goals. These are the goals that are going to be negotiated and validated by, for example, the company's board, right? And shareholders in last level, right? So what are the goals that we're going to commit to? Finally, you look inwards and you look into the internal environment and analyze your competences, your people, the technology that is in the company, the capabilities of the companies, and finally are able to identify strengths and weaknesses. So here we are positioning. Notice that you defined your goals only with external information without looking in, right? Because if you have weaknesses that are holding you back from reaching these goals, you should create projects to eliminate these weaknesses and aim for the global goals, right? I'm going very fast. Each of these little boxes are could be discussed in depth, right? But I want to get through the framework, so I'm just gonna go really quick with them. With all of this, your company identity, your competitive analysis, your opportunities and threats, and strengths and weaknesses, you are ready to make strategic choices, right? And these strategies that are selected, or we're calling them here strategic themes, can be summarized in a strategic map that will be able to communicate with the rest of the company. So this is what we call strategy formulation, right? And it's part of strategy planning. The strategy formulation ends when I select our strategies, right? And summarize them into strategic map. But that's still not the full strategy plan or strategic plan, right? I have to determine how I'm going to implement this strategy. I have to plan how I'm going to implement the strategy. So we come down to a level of cascading goals. So from the strategic map, I'm going to have objectives. Each objectives, I'm going to have KPIs measuring these objectives. And the global KPIs, I'm going to cascade them throughout the organization so that each department, each person will know their part in the whole strategy execution, right? Or strategy plan. So everyone that has a goal, if the goal requires an improvement, you have to deliver more than was delivered in the past, you will require an action plan. So nothing happens by itself, right? Someone has to do something to obtain an improvement in a KPI. So after cascading the goals, every person will create their own action plans, or how am I going to deliver this goal? And you also have the big projects or the transformation projects that come from your strategy, right? All of this feeds into the budget. So how much money is going to come in, how much money is going to go out, and how much are we going to invest? All of this four parts here is also part of planning. So when we say strategic planning, we're talking about these two phases, right? The strategy formulation and how we're going to roll out this strategy for the company. Okay, so at this point, we have a plan. Now we have to implement this plan. We have to execute this strategy, right? So implement actions and plans and projects. This implementation is what we call the do phase, the execution. And it should be monitored to make sure that the plans and projects are going as expected, right? And not delayed or over budget. And periodically, you should check the results, because a plan is, as I said, a hypothesis. I think that if I do this, I will reach that result. But we have to systematically assess if the results are actually being obtained, right? This is what we call the check phase. And finally, question yourself if the goal is being met or not. If the goal is being met, you can standardize. So we have found a new way to do things. Let's make that become the standard. And if the goal is not being met, you have to go back to your action plans, plan new actions, and keep at this cycle until you meet the goal, right? So this is what we call a PDCA cycle, or continuous improvement cycle, right? And this cycle is at the tactical level. We also have the same cycle at the strategic level. So this operational action plan execution, verification, standardization, and project as well, this is the do of the strategy cycle, of the bigger cycle. So within the do, you have a second PDCA here, a tactical PDCA, right? And as you have the verification of goals, you also have to analyze your strategy critically from time to time to see if you have to reassess the strategy or if that strategy is delivering the results that you expect, right? So this is the C in the larger cycle, and finally the A in the larger cycle. So if the strategy is not okay, you have to trigger a restructure of the strategy and begin the process from the top, right? So this is the model or the framework of what we call strategy management, right? We have the formulation, we have the strategy planning, we have the execution, we have the monitoring, and we have the adjustments whenever necessary, right? So all of those phases are represented here in our strategy management framework. Now, there are still 7 webinars we're gonna go through this year, and each webinar is going to tackle a specific topic. Today, we're gonna go very quickly through all 7 topics, just so we can understand where that topic is impacting our strategy management framework and why is it relevant? Why should we be talking about this, right? So the first, before we jump into the first topic, I'd like to ask you if you have a strategy management process in your organization. So this is just a quick survey to break the ice. And if you can read here the QR code or click on the link in the chat and please answer that. I will come back to this question in a couple of minutes for us all to see the answers that you guys are putting in. Okay. Well, first topic that we are going to address in 3 weeks in the next webinar is agility and OKR. So agility is a movement that started in tech areas, tech companies or departments, and it has a few characteristics that adapted, or not adapted, but in common with OKRs. So it's very common for us to see these 2 topics together in companies. Agility, it went out of the tech area into management world, and we see, management and marketing departments talking about working with agility, HR departments, even production, and using the concepts that were generated within this manifesto to have a different style of work, right? So this is very important because they have a few topics or fundamentals that are very interesting and impact strategy execution a lot, right? First is both agility and OKRs work very well and are iterative processes. So they're adaptable. So they're quick to understand when things are not going well and replan and close that loop of the PDCA cycle. And both are also focused on value creation or outcome oriented. So you give the mission to the team, and usually it's autonomous teams, and wait for the result. You don't prescribe ways to do it, right? So this ends up being a culture, a mindset, and not a process, right? So it's very interesting. Sorry, I think I activated the mute without seeing. So it's very interesting. It affects especially the planning phase, and where you have to establish your goals and your within goal cascading, you can have OKRs, and within project management, you can have the agility framework to create projects, especially in environments where you don't know exactly how you're going to execute that, but you know the expected outcome, right? And especially in the dynamic of running through the PDCA cycle. So doing this in a way that is iterative, quick, and has roots within the company's culture. Right? Another topic we're going to dive deep into is artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence can impact strategy management. So I put here just three lines of or topics within artificial intelligence. There are many more, but predictive capabilities. So being able to look into the future and understand what can be expected is very useful in strategy formulation and planning. Also, the large language models, so the generative AIs, it can help a lot within also strategy formulation, but also within the execution process. So interacting with the lower levels of the organization and guiding them through this strategy process. So this is something, it's already reality. It's within, softwares that help the strategy management process. And it's coming with a very interesting approach. And more recently, we have agents, right? So agents are artificial intelligence that actually execute tasks. So we have agents, for example, that can replan activities within a project or within action plans. If something goes wrong or you have limited resources. So agents is very new. It's actually on its initial implementation steps, right? But in the next few years, we're going to see a proliferation of agents, AI agents throughout companies, and strategy management won't be different. So I already mentioned a few steps, right? large language models and predictive AI can help a lot in the strategy formulation process, in the strategy planning, right? Especially, for example, predictive models to cascade goals and establish realistic but challenging goals, and also in the implementation phase. So you can use uh, generative AI to help not just plan the projects, but manage the projects and rearrange actions within projects or action plans to fulfill the company's capabilities, right? And also in checking the results and guaranteeing that everybody is doing their own verifications and checking, doing goal deviations and guiding end users in doing goal deviations and so on. So this is reality already. It's something that is happening in a few companies that are, ahead of the pack. We're also going to be talking in depth about strategy planning itself. So balanced scorecard, goal cascading, how to take the big objectives and break them down throughout the organization, right? Project management to support balanced scorecard, and also other frameworks like ESG, right? How do these frameworks connect with strategy planning, right? So strategy planning is basically this part of the framework where you have the selected strategies or strategic themes. They're translated into a strategic map to communicate throughout the organization. And these strategic map, there's a plan of how to implement that strategy through the goal cascading and action plan creating, and the initiatives or strategic initiatives or projects for the organization. So this is the part of the framework that addresses strategy planning, right? And finally, not finally, but also, right, operational efficiency. So how does process management impact or interact with strategy? And by process management, I'm talking about like the day-to-day routines, the operation of the company. So how does a continuous improvement model and culture can impact strategy? Or there are even some companies that operational excellence is their strategy, like is their the main pillar of their strategy, especially companies that have work in commodities, and they have to be extremely efficient, and that is their core competence, right? How does this interact with strategy? And by continuous improvement, I'm talking about having KPIs measuring process, company process or functions within the company, with goals established on these KPIs, action plans to meet the goals, and every time there's a deviation from the goal, making sure that this deviation is being assessed and treated. And finally, standardizing the new way of working, right? So we're going to talk about in this this webinar how these two things interact, strategy and operational efficiency. And it's basically this tactical cycle here, the do of the strategic cycle, how to implement that and extract real results from from your strategy, right? And systematically going through the whole cycle, right? Another topic we're going to address is strategy and risk, right? So it's very common for us to have different departments, different processes for strategy and for risk. And these departments, these group of people rarely interact with each other. And I think this is just wrong. These methodologies should be hand in hand. They should be connected. Strategy should show within its structure the risks that this particular strategy is taking, and risk management should manage these risks that are identified within strategy and point them out whenever necessary. And for performance management as well, not just strategy, but the pressure to perform, to deliver in certain processes may enhance or leverage some risks. So these two, risk and return, right? You're putting pressure to have return, so you will be exposed to risks. If you don't have these two practices connected, it could you could have some bad surprises down the line, right? Another survey: are your risk management processes integrated with strategy and performance? So you can scan this QR code or in the chat here, you'll have the link to see the results. So feel free to check it out. I forgot to go back to the first survey. I will do that by the end of our talk here, okay? Okay, so people are coming in with results. So far, we have 50% saying that no, they're not integrated. But let's give some time for people to fill in the survey, and we can come back to this by the end. All right, so strategy and risk, where do they interact according to the framework that we're talking about? First, here. So when I have scenarios, it's very common for you to trace, pessimistic scenarios in economy, in technology, in regulatory environment, and so on. So in these scenarios, you can come up with risks that you should be monitoring, right? And also in the execution and verification cycles, this is a place where you will see, performance management and strategy management touching risk management and integrating with risk management. Our second to last event is going to be about people engagement. And people engagement, we will talk about compensation. So how do we align interests of the people that are working the processes with the company's interest, that is to execute that strategy and reach the expected performance, right? So how do we use compensation to align all of these factors, right? And also how we're going to talk about people performance assessments and how that can drive core values for the company. So you remember when we were talking about strategy formulation, that core values was one of the inputs. So how can we align these topics? And also, as a whole, how HR is involved in strategy execution, in planning the strategy execution, right? So HR deals with every employee from C-level to operational level. So they are an essential part of having success in strategy execution. How do we get them involved? Should they be involved? When? Right? So we're gonna deep dive into this topic as well. And the last event is gonna be about bringing it all back in together in a comprehensive strategy management model and a business model, right? Where strategy, risk, people assessment, compensation, operations, project management, all come together in a comprehensive model. So our last event, we're going to be talking about going back to all of these topics and connecting them all again, right? So this people engagement actually permeates the whole model. So I didn't select a specific point here of the model because people are involved in every single one of these boxes. Jerusalem, could you show them how software can support this framework and all of these topics that we touched on?
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you, Guilherme. Thanks for walking us through the strategy management framework that ties this entire master series together. We can take a look at what that looks like in action with our integrated software. Of course, you can manage your strategy using Excel, PowerPoint, or any other scattered tool, and many organizations still do. But what we have learned from working with hundreds of companies is that those tools don't scale. They also don't give real-time visibility. Also, the data is fragmented and spread across multiple tools, which is creating information silo. So that's why today I'm going to take you through a live demonstration of Actius, a strategy execution platform. So what you see here is a strategy map and a framework of a balanced scorecard. You can see the strategic objective of a company aligned across the four perspectives of strategy, balanced scorecard: financial, client, internal process, learning, and growth. And at a glance, you can also see the performance of each objective. So green shows that it's on track, yellow, it sets risk, and red, it's off track. All right. You can also look at a company performance from operational view. So what you're seeing here is an operational view of performance across key business units. And you can see like which one is performing well, which is off track, and which one needs an intervention from leadership. You can also see the performance of your company from the perspective of ESG. All right, and you see like the indicators and how they are performing. Materiality matrix is also available. All right, so let's go back to a balanced scorecard, which is the most commonly used framework for managing strategy. Okay, so in this strategic map that we see that there are one or a couple of them that are off track. So one of them being add value to the shareholder. I can investigate further from this map because this is an interactive. It's not just a static report. All right, so let's see what are the items that are linked to this strategic objective. So I see that these two KPIs are what are driving this objective, EBITDA margin and EBITDA. In addition, I see this strategic initiatives. So this is a portfolio of projects. I can see what are the programs that are linked to it and what are like the sub-projects and the projects attached here. In addition, I have here this OKR. So I see this tactical initiative, and it's further broken down into key results. Each key result shows the expected result targets, and a progress bar is showing how far we're to completing this target and also who's responsible. All right. So let's now go back to our KPIs and let's investigate further. Why do we have this issue? So this EBITDA, I can further break it down or cascade it to an operational level KPIs. Right. From this, I can understand that the gap is in the revenue KPI. And also here, I see that I have one risk. All right. So, and this risk, I can see the risk level. What was my last risk evaluation, my mitigation actions, the effectiveness of my controls. I can see all of them here. So this is an important way of integrating our risk with our strategic initiatives, with our strategy, and with the KPIs. So instead of using a static and isolated spreadsheet, it's better to use an integrated platform here. So here also revenue, I can further cascade it by region. All right. So the gap from all of them, I can see that it's here in British Columbia. And I can see that who's the person responsible for meeting this goal. In support of a continuous improvement to enforce on what Guilherme has mentioned earlier, to make sure that this continuous improvement is an everyday part of our strategy execution, we can create an action plan and monitor it. So what you see here is a project management tool that shows us that the plan. So each action, what is planned, what has been achieved. And also here is a Gantt chart. I can also see my action in a Kanban view. Okay, I'm going back to the relationship. All right, so we already have cascaded our KPIs. We've created an action plan to achieve our goal, but we are still not meeting our goal. So we can also create a deviation report to make sure that we meet our target or we do something differently in the future. All right, so in this deviation report, we have here facts. We can register what are the facts for that. Put it in a Pareto chart and also do a root cause analysis. We have our integration with AI here to help us generate costs. So what makes it different here is all the data that is on the software is going to be used to help us recommend possible causes. All right, so this is going to help us eliminate biases and also empower the professional in identifying and using all the data in the software when it comes to um, analyzing the causes. So, what we have seen is that we have created our strategy, we linked it to our KPIs, we cascaded that, we have linked it with our strategic initiative, linked it to our KPI in all one platforms. What usually happens is that we can use we use different platforms for each one of these practices, but in Actio, we're using everything in one place. So this brings us to the end of our today's demo. I hope this gave you an idea of how you can do strategy execution with the software. We'll head to our Q&A session.
So before you guys can go ahead and put your questions in the Slido. So the link is here in the chat. There are a couple of questions here in the chat that I think we can start addressing them and then skip to Slido. One is from Andrew. So this is a very thorough, robust, purist framework, so valuable. Will this course be reflecting or considering how to make it happen with use cases in the context where this rigor is impossible? We are all moving at speed of sound. AI means it is now on steroids, right? So yeah, for each event, we're going to have a different model. A few of them we're going to bring study cases of people that are implementing that particular topic or have experience implementing that topic. And we're going to bring them in to interview them, see how they did it, what went well, what went wrong. And we're also going to bring in experts on various of these topics. So some of the events will be study cases, some will be expert interviews, and some will be just lectures like today, right? Hillary also put in a question here. Do you have an educational model of Actio that can be used in training educational organizations? Yeah, the software is agnostic as to industry. So we have universities that use this software. We have school complexes, as well as government organizations and manufacturing, telecom, utilities. There is it's a cross-section, cross-industry software because it focuses on corporate processes, right, that are typically common in many industries. Do these platform in a Teams environment is tough. Demo these, okay. So I guess, yes, they are tough to do this in Teams, right? Is the AI also linked with Ishikawa fishbone diagram that you had in the root cause analysis? Today, it's not linked with the fishbone, but it goes in parallel with the fishbone analysis or Ishikawa, right? Because it's another way to work to identify causes. So the AI, we have many touch points of AI throughout the software. The one that Jerusalem showed, it has the purpose of identifying causes. That is the same purpose that the Ishikawa diagram has, but it already reads everything that is around that KPI and around that goal and feeds into the KPI so that when it interacts with the end user, it already knows like, oh, you're under budget, or you're having a cultural problem in your organization that can be impacting this KPI and so on, right? So it reads the environment, and so that when it interacts, it already has some possible causes there. Okay, Antonio, should we go to? We have 3 minutes left. Should we go to the questions in Slido? Okay, there are many questions here in Slido. I'll try to go as fast as I can through them. How do you ensure alignment between strategic goals and day-to-day operations in large enterprises? By cascading the strategic goals up to the operational level or down to the operational level. So in that way, we're able to connect the operational KPIs and the performance delivered by them with the strategic objectives way up in the strategy management, right? So through this cascading, it can be like an MBO model, management by objectives. Also, OKRs have this same proposition of having, OKRs cascading throughout the organization. So which is best to use depends on the organization's culture, on the even the industry where the organization is in, and how dynamic that industry is. The more dynamic, the more I lean to OKRs. The more established, the more I lean to like an MBO process. How much time does it usually take to implement a strategy management solution in a medium-sized enterprise for up to 50 users to begin with? So I imagine you're talking about the software, right? Because to implement the methodology, it usually takes some time, and it usually is gradual. So you implement it at a basic level, and then you increment it as every cycle you go through, right? The software with 50 users, I'd say like 2 months. You have the software going. The only point is integration with databases. So you can have the software going without integration and create a parallel project to integrate as much of your KPIs with your databases and other software so that they will be automatically updated. Let's do one more. Would any real world corporate case studies be discussed during the program? Yes, we will bring in a few people, a few companies that are doing this to talk to us, and in some of our events. So the answer is yes. And one more. Will this course reflect on how to implement this robust framework considering our fast-paced AI development? I think this is the same question that was in the chat, right? So I'll try to skip to the next one. Technology can help with or without AI. Both. I think AI is just an enabler. It makes things easier and faster, but we already had strategy management software before AI came, and it already added value. So nowadays, if you're going to implement a new technology, I would already select a technology that has AI already incorporated within it, because it's just going to be ubiquitous in a few years. So why wait and have to change a technology, right? So I would, if you're starting, I would start with AI, right? I think that's about the time that we have. I thank you all. And again, I urge you to go into our community, right? So in the community, you will find extra materials. You'll be able to contact each other and exchange experiences. We will have an open mic session on the 11th, right, Jerusalem?
19th.
19th, sorry, on the 19th. We're going to send out an email to everybody with the right time and details. But if you're able to make space, I think it's going to be a very good experience of talking to each other and seeing what's happening in other companies and what other people are doing to solve some of the problems that you probably have in your company, right? So see you there, and thank you all for participating.
Thank you all, and hope to see you on our next upcoming webinar.